I stood at the iron gate, staring at my own face. My photograph, the one Gregory had taken last Christmas when I'd worn that red cardigan he said made me look cheerful, was pinned to the metal bars like a wanted poster. Beneath it, printed in bold black letters that seemed to scream at me in the afternoon sun, were 5 words that stopped my heart: "Do not let her in." The security guard wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stood there, one hand resting on his belt, the other holding a clipboard, his face twisted in something between pity and embarrassment. Behind him, through the open gates of the Whitmore estate, I could see white tents billowing in the breeze, hear champagne glasses clinking, catch glimpses of women in silk dresses and men in tailored suits laughing as they made their way toward my son's wedding. My son. The boy I'd raised alone. The child I'd sacrificed everything for. And I wasn't allowed inside. My hands trembled as I clutched my small handbag tighter. I'd spent 2 hours that morning getting ready, ironing my best lavender dress until every wrinkle disappeared, pinning my grandmother's pearl brooch just above my heart, smoothing my silver hair until it lay perfectly against my shoulders. I'd even practiced my smile in the mirror, the one I planned to wear while sitting quietly in the back row, invisible but present, just grateful to witness the most important day of Gregory's life. Now I stood there like a fool, dressed up with nowhere to go, my face plastered on a gate like I was some kind of criminal. "Ma'am," the guard said softly, finally looking at me. His voice was gentle, apologetic. "I'm really sorry. I have my orders. Your name is on the list of people who aren't permitted entry. Would you walk away in silence, or would you demand answers? Tell me in the comments what you would do." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. A list. There was a list, and my name was on it. Not as a guest. As someone to be kept out. Like I was dangerous. Like my presence would somehow ruin everything. I wanted to ask who had made this decision. I wanted to march past that guard and find Gregory, shake him, demand to know how he could allow this to happen. I wanted to scream that I was his mother, that I'd worked double shifts at the library for 15 years to keep him fed and clothed, that I'd cleaned other people's toilets on weekends so he could play football and go to college, that I'd given up every dream I ever had so he could chase his own. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I felt something cold settle over me like a blanket of snow. It wasn't anger exactly. It wasn't even hurt, though God knows the pain was there, sharp and deep in my chest. It was something else. Something quieter. Something that whispered in my ear that no words I could say would matter here, at this gate, to these people who had already decided I wasn't worth their time. Behind me, a couple approached, their invitation clutched in the woman's manicured hand. They slowed when they saw me standing there, saw the photograph, saw the sign. I watched the woman's eyes widen, watched her lean toward her husband and whisper something behind her hand. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, embarrassed to have witnessed my humiliation. That's when I knew. Everyone would see this. Everyone arriving would walk past my face on that gate, would read those words, would know that Gregory Whitmore's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, the woman who raised him alone after his father abandoned us when he was 6, wasn't good enough to attend her own son's wedding. The whispers would spread through that reception like wildfire. Poor thing. Can you imagine? His own mother. What did she do? She must have done something terrible. Maybe she's unstable. Maybe she's an embarrassment. Maybe she's the kind of person who doesn't fit into their new life, their elegant life, their perfect life that doesn't have room for a 71-year-old woman who lives in a small house on the wrong side of town. I could already hear Clarissa's voice in my head, that clipped, cold tone she used whenever she spoke to me. She doesn't understand our world, Gregory. She never will. It's better this way. Trust me. And my son, my beautiful boy with his father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin, had he nodded? Had he agreed? Had he looked at his mother and decided she was too old, too poor, too ordinary to stand beside him on the happiest day of his life? The sun beat down on my shoulders. Sweat began to form on my upper lip despite the October breeze. Inside the estate, I heard a string quartet begin to play. The ceremony would start soon. Guests were finding their seats. Gregory was probably standing at the altar right now, adjusting his tie, maybe glancing toward the entrance, wondering if I'd actually show up after that awkward conversation 3 days ago when he'd stopped by my house and muttered, "Of course you're welcome, Mom. Just don't make a scene, all right? Don't make a scene." As if I'd ever made a scene in my entire life. As if I was the kind of mother who showed up drunk or caused drama or demanded attention. I'd spent Gregory's whole childhood trying to be small, to take up less space, to never be a burden. When the other mothers at his school talked about their vacations to Europe and their lake houses and their husbands' promotions, I smiled and stayed quiet, never mentioning how I'd had to choose between buying him new shoes or paying the electric bill that month. I'd mastered the art of being invisible. And now, apparently, I was being rewarded for it by being made literally invisible. Another couple passed me. Then a family with 3 children in matching outfits. Then an elderly man who looked at me with such genuine confusion that I had to turn away. The guard shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move along. You're blocking the entrance." Blocking the entrance. I was blocking the entrance to my son's wedding. The wedding I'd dreamed about since the day he was born. The wedding where I was supposed to dance with him, where he was supposed to thank me in his speech, where I was supposed to cry happy tears and welcome his bride into our family. Except we weren't a family anymore, were we? We were something else now. Something broken. Something that had been carefully edited, with me cut out of the frame like an unwanted element in a photograph. I took one last look at the white tents, the flowers, the beautiful chaos of a wedding in full swing. I thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The nights I'd stayed up sewing patches on his football uniform because I couldn't afford a new one. The times I'd pretended not to be hungry so he could have seconds at dinner. The parent-teacher conferences where I'd sat alone while other children had both parents flanking them. The college application essays I'd helped him write about overcoming adversity, about being raised by a strong single mother, about learning the value of hard work and sacrifice. He'd gotten into a good school with those essays. He'd built a life with those lessons. And now he was getting married, and I wasn't invited. I turned around. Slowly. Carefully. Like I was made of glass and might shatter if I moved too quickly. I walked back to my car, a 15-year-old sedan that Gregory used to be ashamed of when I picked him up from school, and I got inside. My hands were still shaking as I turned the key in the ignition. Through the rearview mirror, I could see the estate, the gate, the guard probably relieved that I'd left without causing a scene. I drove home in silence. No radio. No tears. Just the sound of my own breathing and the engine's steady hum. When I got back to my small house on Maple Street, I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door I'd painted yellow last spring because yellow was supposed to be a happy color. I'd wanted Gregory to see it and think of sunshine, of hope, of home. I went inside and set my handbag on the kitchen table. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the quiet. Outside my window, Mrs. Chun from next door was watering her roses. The mailman drove by. A dog barked somewhere down the street. The world kept turning like nothing had happened, like my heart hadn't just been ripped out and pinned to a gate for everyone to see. I sat down in my kitchen chair, the same chair I'd sat in for 30 years, and I folded my hands in my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone or post on social media or do any of the dramatic things people do nowadays when they've been wronged. I just sat there. Quiet. Still. Waiting. 2 hours passed. Maybe 3. Time felt strange, like it was moving both too fast and too slow at the same time. And then my phone started ringing. Gregory's name flashed on the screen. Once. Twice. 3 times. 4. The phone buzzed against the table like an angry wasp, demanding my attention, demanding I pick up and explain myself, demanding I fix whatever had gone wrong. Because something had gone wrong. I could feel it. I could sense it the way you sense a storm coming before you see the clouds. But I didn't answer. I just sat there, watching my son's name appear and disappear, while the late afternoon sun slanted through my kitchen window and painted everything gold. Later, much later, I would learn what had happened at that wedding after I left. I would hear about the chaos, the shouting, the guests who left early, the bride who cried angry tears instead of happy ones, the groom who stood at the altar realizing something essential was missing, something that couldn't be replaced or ignored or explained away. But in that moment, sitting in my quiet kitchen with my phone buzzing and my heart slowly hardening into something new, something stronger, I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that I had turned away from that gate with my dignity intact. I had walked away in silence. And somehow, without meaning to, without planning it, without even fully understanding it yet, I had just destroyed my son's perfect wedding. Because it turns out that some people, some mothers, are not meant to be erased. And when you try to make them invisible, when you pin their faces to gates and tell them they don't belong, you discover too late that their absence is louder than their presence ever was. The wedding had ended the moment I went home. They just didn't know it yet. The phone finally stopped ringing around sunset. I sat in the growing darkness of my kitchen, not bothering to turn on the lights, watching the shadows stretch across the walls like reaching fingers. My lavender dress felt heavy now, suffocating, like it was made of lead instead of fabric. I wanted to take it off, to strip away this whole terrible day, but I couldn't seem to move. Couldn't seem to do anything except sit there and replay the moment over and over, my face on that gate, those 5 words, the guard's pitying eyes. But I wasn't always this woman. The woman who got turned away from her own son's wedding. The woman whose photograph got pinned up like a warning sign. I used to be someone different. Someone who believed that love and sacrifice were enough. Someone who thought that if you just worked hard enough, gave enough, bled enough, your children would remember. Would honor you. Would never, ever turn you away. I was 23 when I met Richard Whitmore at a church picnic. He was handsome in that dangerous way, sharp jawline, easy smile, eyes that made promises his mouth never had to speak out loud. My mother had warned me about him the moment she saw us talking. Eleanor, that boy is beneath you. Our family has standards. We don't associate with people like that. People like that. She meant poor people. People who worked with their hands. People who didn't summer in the Hamptons or attend charity galas or know which fork to use at formal dinners. But I was young and stupid and so desperately in love that I couldn't see what she saw. I thought Richard's roughness was authenticity. I thought his lack of money meant he had character. I thought choosing him over my family's approval made me brave instead of foolish. We got married 3 months later at City Hall. My mother didn't come. Neither did my father or my 2 sisters. They sent a letter instead, delivered by their lawyer, informing me that I was no longer welcome in their home, that my inheritance would be revoked, that as far as the Ashford family was concerned, I no longer existed. Have you ever sacrificed everything for someone you love? Let me know in the comments if you'd make the same choice again. Richard held me while I cried that night. He promised me we'd build something better, something real, something that didn't depend on old money or family names or anyone's approval but our own. And for a few years, I believed him. We lived in a tiny apartment above a dry cleaner. He worked construction. I took a job at the public library, shelving books and helping people find what they were looking for. We were poor, but we were happy. At least I thought we were. Then I got pregnant with Gregory, and everything changed. Richard started staying out late. Coming home smelling like cheap perfume and cheaper whiskey. Making excuses that got thinner and thinner until they were just transparent lies we both pretended to believe. I told myself it was the stress of becoming a father. Told myself he'd settle down once the baby came. Told myself all the things women tell themselves when they're too afraid to face the truth. Gregory was born on a Tuesday in March. The most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. All pink skin and dark curls and tiny fingers that gripped mine like he was holding on for dear life. Richard showed up at the hospital 6 hours late, drunk, with lipstick on his collar. He looked at our son for maybe 30 seconds before saying he needed to get back to work. I should have known then. Should have packed my bags and found a way out. But where would I go? My family had disowned me. I had no money, no education beyond high school, no skills except shelving books and changing diapers. So I stayed. I stayed and I pretended everything was fine, even as Richard pulled further and further away, even as the space between us grew into a canyon I couldn't cross. Gregory was 6 years old when Richard finally left. Didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face. Just left a note on the kitchen counter next to an empty coffee mug. I can't do this anymore. Don't try to find me. I read that note 17 times before it sank in. He was gone. Really gone. And I was alone with a 6-year-old boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and I had to figure out how to explain that Daddy wasn't coming home, that Daddy had decided we weren't worth staying for. The library job paid $8 an hour. After rent and utilities and food, there was nothing left. So I started cleaning houses on weekends. Mrs. Patterson's place on Saturdays, scrubbing her toilets and mopping her marble floors while she complained about how hard it was to find good help. The Morrison family on Sundays, washing their dishes and folding their laundry while their 3 spoiled children left toys everywhere and never said thank you. I did this for years. 15 years. working myself to the bone so Gregory could have what he needed. New shoes when his old ones got too small. School supplies at the start of each year. A glove when he made the baseball team. A calculator for his advanced math class. A suit for his first job interview. Every single thing he got, I earned by scrubbing someone else's floor. And I never complained. Never told him how tired I was. Never let him see me cry on those nights when the bills came and I had to decide which ones to pay and which ones to let go. I wanted him to feel safe. Wanted him to believe that even without his father, even with just me, he could have a good life. A normal life. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have let him see the struggle. Maybe then he would have appreciated what I gave up. Gregory was a good kid. Smart. Polite. Teachers loved him. He made honor roll every semester. Played football in high school, not because he was naturally talented, but because he worked harder than anyone else on that field. I went to every game, even the away ones, even when it meant taking an extra shift the next day to make up for the lost time. I'd sit in the bleachers with the other parents, wearing my patched jacket and my worn-out sneakers, cheering louder than anyone else. But somewhere around his sophomore year, I started noticing something. The way he'd walk a little faster when he saw me coming. The way he'd introduce me to his friends as just Eleanor instead of my mom. The way his face would flush with embarrassment when I'd pack his lunch in brown paper bags instead of the fancy insulated lunchboxes the other kids had. He was ashamed of me. I tried to pretend I didn't notice. Tried to tell myself it was just teenage stuff, that all kids went through phases where their parents embarrassed them. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. He wasn't just embarrassed by typical mom things, the way I'd kiss his forehead in public or call him honey in front of his friends. He was embarrassed by who I was. What I was. A poor woman who cleaned houses and wore the same 3 dresses on rotation and drove a car held together with duct tape and prayer. When he left for college, I thought things would get better. Thought the distance would make him appreciate what he had at home. But the phone calls came less and less. First every day, then every few days, then once a week, then only when he needed something. Money for textbooks. Money for a new laptop. Money for a spring break trip with his roommates. I sent what I could, even when it meant eating cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row. Even when it meant putting off the car repairs I desperately needed. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give and give and give until there's nothing left but the hope that our children will remember. Will care. Will come back. The visits home got shorter too. Thanksgiving he'd show up late and leave early. Christmas he'd spend most of his time sleeping or out with old friends. Summer break he'd find internships in other cities, places that required him to stay away, to build his life somewhere I couldn't follow. And then he met Clarissa. I'll never forget the first time he brought her home. It was a Sunday afternoon in October, leaves falling outside my window, and he called 2 hours before showing up to tell me they were coming. I'd scrambled to clean the house, to make it presentable, to hide all the little signs of poverty that had become invisible to me but that I knew would stand out to someone like her. She stepped through my door like she was entering a museum of sadness. Eyes taking in everything, the worn furniture, the patched curtains, the faded wallpaper I couldn't afford to replace. She was beautiful in that cold, perfect way. Blonde hair that looked like it had been professionally styled. Clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. A smile that never quite reached her eyes. So this is where Gregory grew up, she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite name. Not quite pity. Not quite disgust. Something in between. I'd made pot roast, my best dish, the one thing I knew how to cook that felt special. She picked at it like it might poison her. Asked if I had any quinoa. Quinoa. I didn't even know what that was. Gregory barely spoke during dinner. Just kept glancing between us, this nervous energy radiating off him like heat. After they left, I found a $20 bill on the kitchen counter. Like I was a waitress. Like my home was a restaurant and she was leaving a tip for mediocre service. That should have been my warning. But I ignored it. Told myself I was being sensitive. Told myself Clarissa just needed time to warm up to me. Told myself all the things mothers tell themselves when they're desperate to be loved by the women their sons choose. The next few visits were worse. Clarissa stopped pretending to be polite. She'd check her phone constantly during our conversations. Make subtle comments about how small my house was, how old-fashioned my furniture looked, How different Gregory's childhood must have been from hers. Gregory never defended me. Never told her to stop. Just sat there in uncomfortable silence while she slowly, systematically made me feel like I was less than human. One evening, I'll never forget this, I'd offered to help them with their new apartment. They just moved in together, and I thought maybe if I could be useful, if I could show Clarissa that I wasn't just some embarrassing relic from Gregory's past, things might improve. I'd spent 2 days knitting an afghan for their couch. Blue and white, Gregory's favorite colors. My fingers ached from the work, but I didn't care. I wrapped it carefully and brought it over, so excited to see their faces when they opened it. Clarissa looked at it like I'd handed her a dead rat. "Oh," she said, holding it between 2 fingers. "How rustic. I'm sure we'll find somewhere to put it." I watched her carry it into their bedroom. Later, when I used their bathroom, I saw it. Shoved in the back of their closet, still in the wrapping, like trash waiting to be thrown out. That night, after I'd left, I sat in my car in their parking lot for 20 minutes, crying so hard I thought I might throw up. This was my son's life now. This woman who treated me like garbage. This woman who couldn't even pretend to appreciate a gift I'd made with my own hands. And Gregory was choosing her. Every single day, he was choosing her over me. But the worst moment, the moment that should have prepared me for that gate, for that photograph, for those 5 words, came about 3 months before the wedding. I'd stopped by their apartment unannounced. I know, you're never supposed to do that. But Gregory had been dodging my calls, and I was worried. I thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he needed help. I knocked on the door. No answer. But I could hear voices inside, and I knew they were home. So I used the key Gregory had given me for emergencies. I called out as I entered, not wanting to startle them. They were in the kitchen. Gregory was making coffee, and Clarissa was sitting at the island, scrolling through wedding magazines. I started to apologize for barging in, but then I heard Clarissa's voice, sharp and clear in the morning light. "She doesn't fit into our lives, Greg. She belongs to a different world. Don't you see that?" I froze in the hallway, hidden by the angle of the wall. I should have left. Should have turned around and walked out and pretended I'd never heard. But I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything except stand there and wait for my son to defend me. The silence stretched on forever. And then Gregory spoke, his voice so quiet I almost missed it. "I know." 2 words. That's all it took. I know. He knew. He knew she thought I didn't fit. He knew she wanted me erased from their perfect life. And he agreed. I left without announcing myself. Drove home with tears streaming down my face, my hand shaking so badly I almost ran a red light. When I got home, I sat on my front porch and stared at nothing, trying to understand how this had happened. How the boy I'd raised, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, could stand in his kitchen and agree that his own mother didn't belong in his life. But the son I thought I knew was slowly slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. The wedding invitation never came. I checked my mailbox every single day for 2 months like some kind of desperate fool. Watched Mrs. Chin get party invitations and catalogs and letters from her grandchildren overseas. Watched the Johnsons across the street get packages and bills and everything normal people received. But my mailbox stayed stubbornly empty except for the usual junk, credit card offers and grocery store flyers and reminders about overdue library books. At first, I told myself it was just delayed. Mail gets lost all the time, right? Addresses get mixed up. Things fall behind sorting machines at the post office. There were 1,000 reasonable explanations for why my invitation hadn't arrived yet. But then I started hearing things around town. Mrs. Patterson mentioned it while I was scrubbing her guest bathroom. "Oh, Eleanor, I heard your son's getting married. How wonderful. The Sanderson girl, isn't it? Such a lovely family. I hear it's going to be quite the event." Not the Sanderson girl. Clarissa Morrison. But I didn't correct her. Just smiled and nodded and kept scrubbing, even though my hands had started to shake. Then it was the woman at the grocery store checkout line. "Eleanor Whitmore? I thought that was you. Congratulations on Gregory's upcoming wedding. My niece is friends with Clarissa, she says it's going to be absolutely beautiful. White tents, a live band, flowers flown in from somewhere exotic. Must be so exciting for you." I'd smiled. said thank you, paid for my groceries and left before she could see the panic rising in my chest like floodwater. Everyone knew about the wedding. Everyone except, apparently, the groom's mother. I tried calling Gregory. Left 3 voicemails asking about the date, trying to sound casual, trying not to let him hear the desperation in my voice. He didn't call back for 4 days. When he finally did, his voice was tight, rushed, like he was squeezing me in between more important things. Sorry, Mom, it's been crazy busy. Work's been insane, and wedding planning it's a lot. I understand, I'd said, my voice small even to my own ears. I was just wondering, about the date? And the venue? I want to make sure I don't schedule anything that conflicts. Silence on the other end. Long enough that I thought maybe the call had dropped. Gregory. Yeah, I'm here. Listen, Mom, Clarissa's handling all the details. She's got this whole system, and honestly, I'm just staying out of her way. But don't worry, we'll let you know everything soon. We'll let you know. Not I'll send your invitation. Not I'll make sure you have all the information. Just this vague promise that felt like a hand pushing me away. Would you ignore these warning signs, or confront them? Tell me what you'd do. 2 weeks later, I ran into Clarissa's mother at the pharmacy. Helen Morrison, with her designer handbag and her perfect posture and her way of looking at people like she was constantly judging them and finding them lacking. Eleanor, she'd said, her voice sugary sweet in that way that made my skin crawl. How are you, dear? I'm well, thank you. And you? Oh, wonderful. So busy with wedding preparations, of course. Clarissa's been running herself ragged, poor thing. But it's going to be such a beautiful day. The estate we rented is just gorgeous. 6 acres, formal gardens, a ballroom with crystal chandeliers. We're expecting about 200 guests. 200 guests. I'd smiled and nodded, feeling sick. I'm sure Gregory's told you all about it, she continued, watching me carefully. Too carefully. Like she was testing me. Like she knew something I didn't. Of course, I'd lied. It sounds lovely. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a bug under glass. Well, I'm sure we'll see you there. But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said she knew exactly what was happening, and she thought it was funny. I'd driven home and spent the rest of the day in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what I'd done to deserve this. What sin had I committed? What unforgivable offense had made my son decide I wasn't worthy of a simple invitation to his wedding? The town kept talking. Whispers in the grocery store. Conversations at the library. Everyone seemed to know about this grand wedding except the one person who should have been at the center of it all. Did you see the registry? They're registered at stores I've never even heard of. Places that sell $1,000 towels. I heard they hired the same caterer who did the governor's daughter's wedding. Someone told me Clarissa's wearing a dress that cost more than my car. Every word was a knife. Every conversation a reminder that I was being erased, written out of the story of my own son's life. I tried one more time. Called Gregory at work, something I never did because I knew he hated it. His assistant put me through after I insisted it was important. Mom? Is everything okay? I'm in the middle of something. Gregory, I need to ask you something. Silence. Waiting. Impatient. The wedding. I haven't received an invitation. I'm sure it's just a mail issue, but I wanted to check, Mom. His voice had that edge to it. That tone he developed over the years that meant he was annoyed, frustrated, done with the conversation before it had even really started. We've been over this. You're obviously invited. You don't need a formal invitation. You're my mother. But I don't know the date. Or the time. Or where. Clarissa has all that information. I'll have her call you. Clarissa never called. Another week passed. Then another. I watched the calendar with growing dread, knowing the wedding was coming but not knowing when, feeling like I was waiting for an execution date. I started having nightmares. Dreams where I showed up to the wedding in rags, where everyone pointed and laughed, where Gregory looked at me with those cold eyes and said, "What are you doing here? You weren't invited." I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, and have to remind myself it was just a dream. Just anxiety. Just my brain playing tricks on me. Except it wasn't, was it? Because 3 days before the wedding, 3 days, Gregory finally showed up at my house. It was a Thursday evening. I was making dinner, just soup and bread, nothing fancy, when I heard his car pull into the driveway. My heart had leaped. Maybe he was coming to personally deliver my invitation. Maybe he'd finally realized how hurt I'd been. Maybe we'd sit down and talk like we used to, back when he was small and I was his whole world. But the moment he walked through my door, I knew this wasn't a social visit. He looked uncomfortable. Wouldn't meet my eyes. Kept his hands shoved in his pockets like he was trying to physically hold himself together. "Hey Mom." "Gregory. What a nice surprise. Are you staying for dinner? I've made plenty." "No, I can't stay long. I just wanted to. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page about Saturday." Saturday. The wedding was on Saturday. 2 days away, and this was the first time he'd confirmed the date. "Of course," I'd said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been keeping that day clear." He'd nodded, still not looking at me. "Right. So, the thing is, Clarissa's family is very particular about how things run. There's going to be a lot of important people there, business associates, family friends, people from her parents' social circle. And they have specific expectations about." He trailed off, still couldn't finish the sentence. "About what, Gregory?" Finally, he'd looked at me. Really looked at me. And what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't love. It wasn't even affection. It was something closer to resignation. Like he'd already decided I was a problem that needed to be managed. "Just, don't make a scene, all right? I know you wouldn't intentionally, but sometimes you can be a bit much. Asking too many questions, telling stories about when I was a kid, that kind of thing. This is a formal event, and I need you to just blend in. Sit in the back, enjoy the ceremony, and then you can leave before the reception if you want. I'll come find you after to say hi. Don't make a scene. Blend in. Sit in the back. Leave early." These were the instructions for attending my own son's wedding. "I've never made a scene in my life," I'd said quietly. "I know, Mom. I'm just saying, Clarissa's stressed, and I don't want anything to go wrong. This day is really important to her. To us. To her. Not to us. To her." "I understand," I'd heard myself say, even though I didn't understand. Even though nothing about this made sense. "I'll be very quiet. You won't even know I'm there." "Great. Okay. Good." He'd already been moving toward the door, eager to escape. "I'll see you Saturday then. The ceremony starts at 4. Don't be late. Clarissa hates when people arrive late." And then he was gone. Didn't hug me. Didn't kiss my cheek. Didn't even stay long enough for me to ask what I should wear or where exactly I should sit or any of the 1,000 questions that were piling up in my throat. I'd stood in my doorway, watching his taillights disappear down the street, and felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet. Just crack. Like ice on a frozen lake at the start of spring, those first thin lines that warn you the surface won't hold much longer. That night, I'd pulled out my best dress. The lavender one I'd bought at a thrift store 5 years ago for $30, the one I'd saved for special occasions. I'd ironed it carefully, making sure every wrinkle was gone. I'd polished my grandmother's pearl brooch until it shined. I'd laid everything out on my bed like I was preparing for a battle instead of a wedding. Because that's what it felt like. A battle. Me versus Clarissa. Me versus this new life Gregory had built that apparently had no room for the woman who'd built him. I'd practiced in front of the mirror. Practiced sitting quietly with my hands folded. Practiced smiling without it looking forced. Practiced being invisible, which was apparently the only way I was allowed to exist in my son's life anymore. Friday came and went in a blur of anxiety. I barely slept. Kept getting up to check my outfit again, to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, to convince myself that tomorrow would be okay. That I'd sit in the back like Gregory asked. That I'd watch him marry this woman who hated me. That I'd smile through it all and then go home and cry where no one could see. Saturday morning, I woke up at dawn. Couldn't eat breakfast, my stomach was in knots. Spent 3 hours getting ready, wanting to look perfect, wanting to prove that even though I was poor, even though I cleaned houses for a living, even though I drove an old car and lived in a small house, I could still be presentable. I could still be a mother who didn't embarrass her son. I'd arrived at the estate at 3:30. Early, but not too early. Not wanting to be late like Gregory had warned. And that's when I'd seen it. My face. On that gate. With those words that would replay in my mind for the rest of my life. But nothing could prepare me for the cruel welcome waiting at the gate. I didn't cry that Saturday evening. Maybe that's what surprised me most. I sat in my kitchen, still in my lavender dress, watching the light fade outside my window, and not a single tear came. It was like something inside me had shut down, some emotional circuit breaker had flipped, protecting me from the full weight of what had just happened. The phone kept ringing. Gregory's name. Over and over. Like he could sense something had gone wrong, even though he had no idea I'd been turned away. Or maybe he did know. Maybe he'd been the one who ordered that photograph printed, that sign made, that guard instructed to keep me out. No. I couldn't let myself think that. Not yet. There was still a part of me, a small, stubborn part, that wanted to believe my son was better than that. That this was all Clarissa's doing. That if Gregory knew what had happened, he'd be horrified. He'd fix it. He'd choose me. But would he? That was the question that kept circling my mind like a vulture. Around 8 o'clock, I finally got up. My knees cracked, a reminder that I was 71 years old and had spent the last 4 hours sitting in the same chair without moving. I walked to the sink, filled a glass with water, drank it without tasting it. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Chen's grandchildren playing in her yard. Their laughter drifted through my window, innocent and carefree. They had no idea that just a few miles away, a wedding was happening. Or maybe had already happened. Without me. The thought should have hurt. Should have ripped me apart. But instead, I just felt numb. Hollow. Like I'd been carved out and left empty. I changed out of the lavender dress carefully, hanging it back in my closet where it would probably stay for another 5 years before I found another occasion special enough to wear it. The pearl brooch went back in its velvet box. The shoes back on their shelf. I put on comfortable clothes, sweatpants and an old college t-shirt Gregory had given me years ago, back when he still claimed me as his mother in public. I made tea. Chamomile, supposed to be calming. It tasted like hot water and broken dreams. The phone had stopped ringing around 9. Maybe Gregory had given up. Maybe the wedding was in full swing now, everyone drinking and dancing and celebrating while the groom's mother sat alone in her small house, trying to figure out what she'd done wrong. That's what kept eating at me. What had I done? I'd replayed every interaction with Clarissa 100 times. Yes, I'd been enthusiastic when we first met, maybe too enthusiastic. Yes, I'd made gifts that she didn't appreciate. Yes, I'd probably asked too many questions about their lives, their plans, their future. But were these crimes? Did these things justify being banned from my own son's wedding? Have you ever been humiliated at a family event? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments. I thought about calling someone. But who? I had no family left. My mother had died 3 years ago without ever speaking to me again after I married Richard. My sisters had sent a brief card to the funeral but hadn't attended. I had no siblings to call, no cousins who cared, no aunts or uncles who remembered I existed. Friends? I had acquaintances. People at the library who were pleasant to me. Neighbors who waved hello. But no one I could call at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night and say, I need you. Something terrible has happened. I was turned away from my son's wedding, and I don't know how to survive this. So I sat alone with my tea and my thoughts and the growing realization that this was my life now. This loneliness. This isolation. This feeling of being unwanted by the one person who was supposed to want me unconditionally. Around 11, headlights swept across my living room window. A car pulling into my driveway. My heart jumped. Gregory. It had to be. He'd left his wedding early to come check on me. He'd realized I wasn't there. He'd figured out what happened. This was it. The moment where he'd choose me. Where he'd apologize and hold me and tell me it was all a terrible mistake. I rushed to the window, peered through the curtains. But it wasn't Gregory's car. It was a silver BMW I didn't recognize. The engine turned off. The driver's side door opened. A woman stepped out, tall and elegant even in the darkness. Clarissa. My blood turned to ice. She walked up to my door like she owned the place, her heels clicking on my concrete path. I watched her through the window, this woman who had orchestrated my humiliation, and something hot and fierce started burning in my chest. That numbness I'd been feeling all evening? It vanished in an instant, replaced by pure rage. She knocked. 3 sharp raps that sounded more like demands than requests. I didn't move. Just stood there in the shadows of my living room, watching her through the curtains. She knocked again. "Mrs. Whitmore? I know you're home. I can see your lights on." My lights. Of course. I'd turned on the kitchen light when I made tea. Amateur mistake. "Mrs. Whitmore, we need to talk. Please open the door. We need to talk." The audacity of this woman. She humiliates me, bans me from the wedding, and now she's at my door demanding I let her in for a chat? I could have ignored her. Should have ignored her. But that burning feeling in my chest was growing, spreading, consuming the careful politeness I'd maintained for 30 years. All those years of swallowing my pride, of accepting scraps, of pretending not to notice when people disrespected me, it all came flooding up my throat like bile. I yanked open the door. Clarissa stood on my porch in her wedding dress. A stunning white gown that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Her hair was still perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. But her eyes were cold. Hard. Like chips of blue ice. "What do you want?" My voice came out flat, emotionless. "May I come in?" "No." She blinked, surprised. Like she'd expected me to roll over and play nice like I always did. "Mrs. Whitmore, I think we should discuss what happened today." "What happened today?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "You mean how I showed up to my son's wedding and found my photograph pinned to the gate with a sign telling security not to let me in? That what happened today. He didn't come from nothing. He came from love." She actually laughed. "Love? Is that what you call it?" Raising him in this, she gestured dismissively at my house, this place? Making him wear second-hand clothes? Driving him to school in that embarrassment of a car? You kept him small, Eleanor. You kept him trapped in your little world of poverty and limitation. I gave him freedom. I gave him a future. And you can't stand it because it doesn't include you. My hands were shaking. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "Does Gregory know you're here?" "Of course not. He's at the reception, trying to salvage what's left of our wedding day. Which, by the way, you ruined." "I ruined? I wasn't even there." "Exactly." Her smile was sharp, dangerous. "Your absence caused problems. Problems I'm here to fix. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Gregory tomorrow and apologize. You're going to tell him you weren't feeling well, that's why you didn't come. And then you're going to stop calling so much. Stop showing up uninvited. Stop inserting yourself where you're not wanted. Give us space. Let Gregory live his life without you constantly pulling him back to this, another dismissive gesture, this existence." I stared at her. This woman in her designer wedding dress, standing on my porch, demanding I apologize for being humiliated. Demanding I make myself smaller. Demanding I disappear. And something inside me finally snapped. "Get off my property." "Excuse me." "You heard me. Get off my property." "Mrs. Whitmore." "It's Eleanor." "And you will leave my porch right now, or I will call the police and tell them there's a woman in a wedding dress trespassing and making." Clarissa's face went white. Then red. Then something in between that made her look like a stranger instead of a bride. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." I kept my hand on the doorframe, kept my voice steady even though my heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. "You came to my home uninvited. You insulted me. You threatened me. And now I'm asking you to leave. That's how property rights work, even in your fancy world." For a moment, we just stared at each other. 2 women separated by age and money and a man we both claimed to love but in completely different ways. I could see her calculating, deciding if I was serious, weighing whether causing a scene on my porch was worth whatever point she was trying to make. Finally, she stepped back. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You got what you wanted. I wasn't at your wedding. You successfully erased me from the most important day of my son's life. Congratulations. Now leave. She turned, her wedding dress swishing as she walked back to her BMW. But at the car door, she paused. Looked back at me with something that might have been pity or might have been triumph, I couldn't tell which. He chose me, Eleanor. Not you. He chose me. Then she got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing in my doorway, shaking so hard I had to grip the frame with both hands to stay upright. I closed the door. Locked it. Then I slid down to the floor and sat there with my back against the wood, finally letting the tears come. Not sad tears. Angry tears. The kind that burn your eyes and make your chest heave and leave you feeling emptied out and raw. She was right. Gregory had chosen her. He'd chosen her over me, over his own mother, over everything I'd sacrificed to give him a life. And there was nothing I could do about it except sit on my floor in my sweatpants and cry like a child. Around midnight, I dragged myself to bed. Didn't bother brushing my teeth or washing my face. Just crawled under the covers and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my entire life. But somewhere in that darkness, in that loneliness, something else started growing. Something hard and bright and unbreakable. It wasn't quite anger anymore. It was something colder. Something that felt like clarity. I'd spent 30 years making myself small for Gregory. Apologizing for being poor. Apologizing for not being enough. Accepting scraps of attention and calling it love. Letting him and everyone around him treat me like I was disposable. But I wasn't disposable. I was his mother. I'd earned my place in his life with blood and sweat and tears and sacrifice. And if he couldn't see that, if he'd chosen to throw me away like Clarissa threw away that Afghan I'd knitted, well, maybe it was time I stopped begging for scraps. Sometimes silence is stronger than words. Do you agree? Tell me in the comments what you think. Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from Gregory. 5 from numbers I didn't recognize. And 1 voicemail from Gregory that I played on speaker while making coffee. Mom, where were you yesterday? I looked for you at the wedding, but security said you never showed up. Are you okay? Did something happen? Call me back. Please. People are asking questions, and I don't know what to tell them. People are asking questions. Not I'm worried about you. Not I can't believe you missed it. Just concern about what other people were thinking. I deleted the voicemail without responding. An hour later, he showed up at my door. Still in his wedding clothes from the night before, though his tie was loose and his shirt was wrinkled. He looked exhausted. Stressed. Like he'd been up all night dealing with something he didn't understand. Mom, what happened? Why weren't you there? I looked at him through the screen door. My son. My beautiful boy who'd grown into a man I didn't recognize anymore. And I realized something that should have been obvious all along. This version of Gregory, the one standing on my porch demanding explanations, wasn't the boy I'd raised. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd been gone for years, and I'd just been too desperate to notice. I was there, I said quietly. What? No, security said. I was there, Gregory. I arrived at 3:30, just like you told me. And I found my photograph pinned to the gate with a sign that said, "Do not let her in." His face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion. Disbelief. Realization. Horror. Guilt. And finally, something that looked like resignation. Mom, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you allowed your mother to be humiliated like that? Why you let your wife, yes, I know it was Clarissa, ban me from your wedding? Why you didn't even have the courage to tell me yourself that I wasn't wanted? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Gregory? Explain it to me. Make me understand how the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, could stand by and let this happen. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from when he was little and got caught doing something wrong. Clarissa thought it would be easier. Less stressful. She said, I don't care what Clarissa said. I care what you did. Which was nothing. You did nothing while your wife decided your mother wasn't good enough to attend your wedding. That's not fair. Fair. The word came out sharp, bitter. You want to talk about fair? I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to keep you clothed and fed. I went without so you could have. I scrubbed other people's toilets so you could play football and go to college and build the life you wanted. And you repaid me by letting your wife pin my picture to a gate like I was a criminal.
Mom, please. No. I'm done, Gregory.
I'm done apologizing for being poor. I'm done making myself small so you won't be embarrassed. I'm done begging for basic respect for my own child.
You made your choice yesterday. You chose Clarissa. You chose your new life. And that's fine. That's your right.
But don't come to my door now asking me to explain why I wasn't there.
You know exactly why.
He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish, trying to find words that didn't exist.
Because what could he say?
What excuse could possibly make this better? I didn't know she was going to do that, he finally managed.
I swear, Mom, I didn't know about the sign.
Clarissa handled all the security arrangements, and I just assumed.
You assumed.
You assumed your mother would be treated with basic human dignity at your wedding.
But you never checked. Never confirmed.
Never thought to make sure I was actually welcome at the most important day of your life. Because deep down, you didn't care if I was there or not.
That's not true.
Isn't it? Be honest with me for once, Gregory. For once in your life, just be honest. Did you want me at your wedding? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know.
That's what I thought, I said. You can go now. Mom.
Goodbye, Gregory. I closed the door in his face. The real door, not just the screen. Closed it and locked it and walked away while he stood on my porch calling my name, begging me to let him explain, promising things would be different. But the real fallout had only just begun. The town started talking by Monday morning. I heard it first at the library. I'd gone to work like always, because what else was I supposed to do?
Sit at home and cry? No.
I'd spent Sunday night making a decision. I would not let this break me. I would not let Gregory and Clarissa and their perfect wedding destroy what was left of my dignity. So I showed up for my shift, and the moment I walked through the doors, conversations stopped. People looked at me with that particular expression, the one that means they know something about your life that you wish they didn't. Janet, my co-worker for the past 12 years, pulled me aside in the break room.
Eleanor, honey, are you okay?
I heard about the wedding.
What did you hear?
I kept my voice neutral, professional.
She looked uncomfortable.
Shifted her weight from foot to foot like she was standing on hot coals. Just that there was some kind of incident.
That you weren't there.
People are saying all sorts of things.
What sorts of things?
Well, she lowered her voice even though we were alone. Some people are saying you boycotted it because you disapprove of Clarissa.
Others are saying you were sick.
And then there's a rumor going around that, she stopped, bit her lip.
That what, Janet?
That you weren't invited. That there was your picture at the gate with security instructions not to let you in.
So the truth was out. Someone had talked.
Maybe the security guard. Maybe one of the early arriving guests who'd seen my face on that gate. Maybe Clarissa herself, spinning the story to make me look like the problem. Sometimes the strongest revenge is silence. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
It's true, I said calmly. All of it.
Janet's face crumpled with sympathy.
Oh, Eleanor.
I don't want to talk about it.
I just want to work.
But of course, I couldn't just work. Because by lunchtime, the story had spread beyond the library. Mrs. Patterson called to cancel her cleaning appointment, permanently. I'm sorry, Eleanor, but I can't have someone in my home who's involved in this kind of family drama.
It's just too uncomfortable. Family drama. Like I'd caused it.
Like I'd been the one to pin photographs to gates and ban people from weddings.
The Morrisons cancelled too. Then the Hendersons.
By the end of the day, I'd lost 3 of my 5 cleaning clients. Half my income, gone in a few hours. I drove home in a daze, trying to understand how I'd become the villain in this story. How had I been banned from my son's wedding and somehow ended up being blamed for it? That evening, my phone started buzzing with messages. Not from Gregory, he'd stopped trying after I closed the door in his face Sunday morning.
But from people I barely knew.
People offering their opinions on social media posts I hadn't even seen. Apparently, someone had started talking on Facebook. The story was spreading. And like all stories that spread online, it was getting twisted, embellished, turned into something it wasn't.
Some people were on my side, can you imagine? Her own son's wedding. That poor woman.
But others weren't. She must have done something to deserve it. Nobody bans their mother-in-law without a good reason.
I wanted to respond. Wanted to tell my side.
Wanted to explain that I hadn't done anything except love my son too much.
But I didn't. Because engaging would only make it worse. Would only fuel the fire. So I stayed silent. Let them talk. Let them speculate.
Let them decide I was either a victim or a villain. I was too tired to care which.
Tuesday brought a phone call I didn't expect.
Gregory's voice on the other end, tight and controlled.
Mom, we need to talk about the damage control. Damage control. Not I'm sorry. Not I'm trying to fix this. Damage control. What damage needs to be controlled, Gregory? The rumors.
People are talking, and it's making things difficult for Clarissa and me.
Her parents are upset.
My boss has been asking questions.
We need to present a united front. A united front. Yes.
I need you to tell people that you were sick. That's why you missed the wedding.
Food poisoning or something.
Just something that explains your absence without making Clarissa look bad.
I laughed. Couldn't help it.
The sound came out harsh and ugly, but I didn't care.
You want me to lie?
To protect the woman who humiliated me.
I'm asking you to think about the family. About what's best for everyone. Everyone except me, you mean? Mom, please. I know you're hurt. I understand that.
But dragging this out publicly helps no one. If we just present a simple explanation, people will move on.
The gossip will die down. Everything can go back to normal. Normal. I tasted the word, found it bitter. What's normal, Gregory? You pretending I don't exist?
Me cleaning houses while you live in your fancy apartment with your fancy wife? Me sitting alone on holidays while you make excuses about why you can't visit? Is that the normal you want to go back to?
That's not fair. I'm done being fair.
I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. You want to know what I'm going to tell people?
The truth.
That I showed up to my son's wedding and was turned away. That my daughter-in-law decided I wasn't good enough. That my son allowed it to happen.
That's what I'm going to say.
Mom, if you do that, you'll ruin everything.
I didn't ruin anything. You did. You and Clarissa. And now you get to live with it. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep.
Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways my life had changed in just 3 days. I'd gone from being a mother preparing for her son's wedding to being a social pariah, blamed for drama I didn't create, losing work because people were uncomfortable with my situation. And somewhere across town, Gregory and Clarissa were in their apartment, probably arguing about how to manage the fallout.
How to spin the story.
How to make me disappear without it looking like they were trying to make me disappear. By Thursday, Clarissa's family had launched a full campaign to ruin me.
It started small.
A post on a local Facebook group from an account I didn't recognize. Does anyone else think it's suspicious that Eleanor Whitmore is playing victim after she showed up to her son's wedding drunk and had to be removed by security?
My cousin was there and said it was embarrassing. I wasn't there. I'd never been drunk in my life.
But that didn't matter. The lie was out there, and lies spread faster than truth ever could.
More posts followed.
More accounts I'd never seen before, all saying variations of the same thing. I'd caused a scene.
I'd been inappropriate.
I'd tried to ruin the wedding out of jealousy. Some even claimed I'd threatened Clarissa, that I'd sent her disturbing messages, that I'd stalked them.
None of it was true.
But truth doesn't matter when reputation is on the line.
Do you think Gregory will ever admit his mistake? Let me know what you believe.
The library got phone calls. People complaining that they didn't feel comfortable with me working there, that I seemed unstable, that they were worried about their children's safety. My boss, Mr. Henderson, called me into his office Friday morning. Eleanor, I don't know what's going on with your personal life, and frankly, I don't want to know. But these complaints, I can't ignore them. I'm going to have to put you on temporary leave while we sort this out.
Temporary leave?
I've worked here for 15 years without a single complaint.
I know. And I'm sorry. But my hands are tied. The parents' committee is demanding action. Just take some time off. Let things cool down. We'll revisit in a few weeks. A few weeks without pay. A few weeks while Clarissa's lies spread and solidified into accepted fact. I cleaned out my desk in silence while co-workers avoided my eyes. Janet gave me a quick hug and whispered, "This is wrong. Everyone knows it's wrong." But knowing and doing something about it are two different things. I'd lost my cleaning jobs. Now I'd lost my library job. In less than a week, my entire income had vanished. All because I'd been turned away from my son's wedding. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my bills spread out in front of me. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, food. I had maybe 2 months' worth of savings. Then what? The phone rang. Gregory again. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Mom, I heard about the library." "I'm sorry." "Are you? Are you really sorry, Gregory?" "Of course I am. I never wanted any of this to happen." "But you're not stopping it, are you? You're not telling Clarissa to call off her attack dogs. You're not posting on social media that the rumors are lies. You're just sitting there being sorry while my life falls apart." Silence on the other end. Long and heavy. "I can't control what Clarissa's family does," he finally said. "You could if you wanted to. You could tell them to stop. You could stand up for me. You could choose your mother over your wife's campaign to destroy me. But you won't. Because that would make your life difficult." It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're choosing comfort over what's right. You're choosing to protect yourself instead of protecting me. Just like you chose to let me be banned from your wedding. Just like you've been choosing Clarissa over me for months. Years, maybe. "Mom, I love you." "No, you don't. Not really. You love the idea of me. The mother who sacrificed everything. The backstory that makes you look good. But you don't actually love me enough to stand by me when it costs you something." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Post something on social media right now. Tell everyone the truth. Tell them I wasn't drunk. Tell them I didn't cause a scene. Tell them I was banned from your wedding by your wife's family, and you allowed it to happen. Prove that you love me more than you love your comfortable life." The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "I can't do that," he whispered finally. "I know. That's why I'm done, Gregory. I'm done hoping you'll choose me. I'm done waiting for you to become the man I raised you to be. I'm done." "Don't say that. I love you. I will always love you. But I don't like you very much right now. And I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. So I'm stepping back. I'm letting you go. And maybe someday when your marriage falls apart, and it will fall apart, Gregory, because relationships built on cruelty always do, maybe then you'll realize what you lost. But by then, it might be too late." I hung up before he could respond. And this time, I turned off my phone completely. Saturday morning, I woke up to pounding on my door. Angry pounding. The kind that means trouble. I looked through the peephole and saw Clarissa standing there with 2 men in expensive suits. Lawyers, probably. Or private investigators. People with briefcases and hostile expressions. "Mrs. Whitmore, open this door. We have a cease and desist letter to deliver." I opened the door but kept the chain on. A cease and desist for what? For harassment. For defamation. For spreading malicious lies about my client and her family. I haven't spread any lies. You told multiple people that you were banned from your son's wedding. That is a malicious mischaracterization of events designed to damage my client's reputation. It's not a mischaracterization. It's exactly what happened. That's not how we see it. You were asked not to attend due to security concerns about your mental stability. You're twisting that into something sinister to make yourself look like a victim. Mental stability. They were saying I was crazy. Actually putting it in legal documents. Get off my property. Sign this document agreeing to stop talking about the wedding or face legal action. No. One of the lawyers pushed an envelope through the crack in the door. You've been served. We'll see you in court. They left, and I stood there holding the envelope, my hands shaking with rage.
They were actually suing me. Trying to legally silence me for telling the truth about what they'd done. I opened the envelope. Scanned the legal language. They were demanding I publicly recant my false statements, issue an apology to Clarissa, and pay for emotional damages and reputational harm. The amount they were demanding? $50,000. Money I didn't have. Money I could never get. They knew that. This wasn't about winning in court. This was about burying me under legal fees I couldn't afford, forcing me into silence through financial ruin. But I wasn't alone. Not completely. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Janet showed up at my door with a casserole and a determined expression. "I know what they're doing to you," she said. "And it's wrong. Some of us at the library have been talking. We want to help." "Help how?" "We started a GoFundMe. For your legal fees. And we're posting the truth online, what really happened at that gate. You can't let them silence you, Eleanor. You can't let them win." I started crying. Couldn't help it. For the first time in a week, someone was standing beside me instead of watching from a distance. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you risk it? They'll come after you too." "Because it's the right thing to do. And because bullies only win when good people stay silent." Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. The GoFundMe raised $12,000. People I barely knew donated, wrote supportive messages, shared the truth about what had happened. The tide was turning. Slowly, but it was turning. And Clarissa and her family were realizing that destroying me wasn't going to be as easy as they'd thought. But in the end, he was forced to make a choice. 3 weeks after the wedding, Gregory showed up at my door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothes rumpled, his hair uncombed. He looked broken in a way I'd never seen before, not even when his father left. This was deeper. Older. The kind of breaking that happens when you finally see yourself clearly and don't like what you find. "Can I come in?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I should have said no. Should have closed the door the way I'd closed it before. But I couldn't. Because despite everything, despite all the hurt and betrayal and cruelty, he was still my son. That bond doesn't break just because you want it to. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked to my kitchen table, the same table where he'd done his homework as a child, where I'd helped him with college applications, where we'd shared so many meals, and collapsed into a chair like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "I'm sorry," he said. And then he started crying. Not quiet tears. Loud, ugly sobbing that shook his whole body. I stood there, watching my son fall apart, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, I'd already broken. This was different. This was the crack that lets light in. Would you forgive your child if they treated you this way? Tell me honestly in the comments. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. You were right. About everything. About Clarissa. About what I let happen. About me choosing my comfort over you. I sat down across from him. Folded my hands on the table. Waited. "The marriage is falling apart," he continued, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand like he used to when he was little. "Has been since the wedding. Maybe even before. I just didn't want to see it." "What happened?" "Everything. Nothing. I don't know." He laughed bitterly. "The morning after the wedding, Clarissa told me about coming here. About confronting you. She acted like it was funny, Mom. Like humiliating you was some kind of joke. And when I got upset, when I said she'd gone too far, she looked at me like I was crazy. Said you deserved it. Said you'd been trying to ruin our relationship from the start." "And you believed her?" "No. Not anymore." That's when I started paying attention to other things. Little things I'd been ignoring. The way she talks about people who aren't as wealthy as her family. The way she treats waiters and store clerks. The way she talks about you when she thinks I'm not really listening. She uses words like trashy and embarrassing and beneath us. Those are the words she uses for me. I know. And I let her. I stood there and let her talk about my mother like you were garbage. What kind of person does that make me? A person who made mistakes. A person who can still choose to do better. He looked up at me, hope and fear warring on his face. Can I fix this?"
I don't know, Gregory. That depends on what you're willing to do. Anything. I'll do anything. Then start by being honest. With yourself first. Then with me. Why did you let it happen? The gate. The sign. My picture. Why didn't you fight for me? He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so small I almost didn't hear it. Because I was ashamed. Of me. Of where I came from. Of being poor.
Of having a mother who cleaned houses and drove an old car and couldn't afford the things other kids' parents could afford. When I got to college and met people like Clarissa, people who'd never worried about money, never had to choose between electricity and food, never had to wear second-hand clothes, I wanted to be like them. I wanted to forget about the struggle. About the sacrifice. About you. The truth, finally. After all these years of pretending, of making excuses, he was finally being honest. Do you know what I gave up for you? I asked quietly. I know you worked hard. No. Do you really know? Do you know that I gave up my family? My inheritance? Any chance of financial security? I married your father and got disowned. Lost everything. And when he left, I could have given you up. Could have called my mother and begged her to take us in. She might have said yes if I'd promised to leave Richard and never speak of him again. But I didn't. Because I'd made a commitment. To your father first, and then to you. I chose to do it alone, to struggle, to sacrifice, because I believed that love was enough. That being your mother was worth more than money or comfort or my family's approval. Gregory's face crumpled. I didn't know. You didn't ask. You just assumed I was fine. That my life was small and simple and didn't matter very much. But my life was you, Gregory. You were my whole world. And you threw me away like trash. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. 6 months of lawyers and negotiations and Clarissa's family trying to drag things out, trying to punish Gregory for daring to leave their perfect daughter. They painted him as mentally unstable, claimed he'd been brainwashed by his controlling mother, demanded huge settlements and alimony payments. But Gregory had good lawyers now. And more importantly, he had evidence. Texts from Clarissa calling me names. Emails coordinating the gate incident. Recorded conversations where she'd admitted to spreading lies about me online. Turns out Gregory had started documenting everything after that night in my kitchen, and his documentation was thorough. The judge was not impressed with Clarissa or her family. The divorce was granted with a settlement far smaller than they demanded, and Gregory was free. During those 6 months, I watched my son slowly become himself again. Or maybe become someone new, someone better than he'd been before. He started volunteering at a homeless shelter, working with kids from backgrounds like his own. Started calling me twice a week, just to talk, no agenda. Started showing up at my house with groceries when he knew money was tight. What would you do? Choose your spouse or your parent? Share your perspective in the comments. I'd gotten my library job back after Gregory's post went viral. Mr. Henderson had apologized, sort of, and reinstated me with back pay. It wasn't enough, but it was something. One Sunday afternoon in March, almost exactly 6 months after that terrible wedding day, Gregory showed up at my door with a strange expression on his face. Nervous but determined. I need to show you something, he said. We drove across town to a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Nice houses. Neat lawns. Trees lining the streets. He pulled into the driveway of a small blue cottage with a white porch and flower boxes under the windows. What is this? I asked. It's yours. If you want it. I stared at him. What are you talking about? I used part of my divorce settlement to buy it. Nothing fancy, but it's bigger than your place on Maple Street. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a yard where you could plant a garden. I thought, he stopped, swallowed hard. I thought maybe you deserved something better than the house where Dad left you. A fresh start. Somewhere without all those memories. I got out of the car slowly, walked up to the porch, looked through the windows at the empty rooms waiting to be filled. It was beautiful. Small but beautiful. The kind of house I'd dreamed about when Gregory was little, before I'd resigned myself to making do with what I had. You did this for me? I owed you 30 years' worth of birthday and Christmas presents. Figured I'd better start somewhere. He tried to smile,
but his eyes were wet. I can't give you back the time I wasted being ashamed of you. Can't undo the hurt. But maybe I can give you this. A place that's just yours. Where you can start over. I should have been angry that he thought a house could fix everything. Should have told him that material things don't replace love and respect. But standing there on that porch, looking at this gift he'd given me, not because he had to, but because he wanted to, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about the house. It was about what it represented. An acknowledgement. An apology in the form of action, not just words. A son trying to honor his mother the way he should have all along. It's perfect, I whispered. We spent the afternoon walking through the empty rooms, talking about paint colors and furniture placement and all the little details that turn a house into a home. For the first time in months, I felt light. Free. Like maybe the worst was finally behind us. But I was wrong. Because that evening, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Eleanor Whitmore? Yes. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the police department. I need to ask you some questions about Clarissa Morrison. My blood ran cold. What about her? She's been reported missing. Her parents filed a report this morning. When did you last see or speak to her? At my house. The night of the wedding. She hasn't contacted me since. And your son? Gregory? He's been with me all day. We've been looking at houses. I see. Well, we may need to speak with both of you. Her family is suggesting that you or your son might be involved in her disappearance. That's ridiculous. We haven't been anywhere near her. I'm sure it's all just a misunderstanding. But we need to follow up on all leads. Someone will be in touch. She hung up, and I stood there staring at my phone, feeling the world tilt beneath my feet. Gregory had come back inside from checking out the yard. One look at my face and he knew something was wrong. Mom? What happened? Clarissa's missing. The police think we might be involved. His face went white. That's insane. I haven't spoken to her in weeks. Not since the lawyers took over. Her family is blaming us. Of course they are. We're the perfect scapegoats. We spent the next 3 days under a microscope. Police interviews. Alibi verifications. Searches of our phones and computers and homes. Gregory's apartment was torn apart looking for evidence that didn't exist because we hadn't done anything. The media picked up the story. Bitter divorce ends in mysterious disappearance. Mother and son questioned in missing bride case. The headlines made us sound guilty before any facts were known. Old wounds reopened. People who'd supported me during the lawsuit started questioning whether I'd been the victim after all. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I had done something. Maybe that gate incident had been justified. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Just sat in my old house on Maple Street, I hadn't moved to the cottage yet, and waited for the other shoe to drop. On the 4th day, Detective Martinez called again. Mrs. Whitmore, we found her. My heart stopped. Is she? She's alive. In Florida. Apparently she decided to take an impromptu vacation without telling anyone. Including her family. She's been at a resort in Miami with a man she met online. Relief flooded through me like water. So we're cleared. Completely. Her family is, well, they're dealing with their own issues now. I'm sorry you and your son were put through this. Sometimes people weaponize the police in family disputes. It shouldn't happen, but it does. After she hung up, I called Gregory and told him. Heard him break down crying on the other end of the line, tears of relief and exhaustion and the overwhelming weight of finally being free. Clarissa had tried one last time to destroy us. Had staged her own disappearance to frame us, to make us look like violent criminals. But she'd gotten caught. And this time, there were consequences. Her family had filed a false police report. She'd wasted police resources. And the man she'd run away with? Turned out he was married. The whole thing exploded in spectacular fashion across social media and local news. The Morrison family reputation, the one they'd been so desperate to protect, was in tatters. And Gregory and I were finally, truly free. But in the end, he was forced to make a choice. And he chose me. I moved into the blue cottage in April,
almost exactly 1 year after that terrible wedding day. Gregory helped me pack up the house on Maple Street, the house where I'd raised him alone, where I'd cried over bills and celebrated his achievements and slowly watched him drift away from me. We boxed up 30 years of memories, some painful, some beautiful, all of them part of the story that had brought us to this moment.
Mrs. Chen cried when I said goodbye. You were a good neighbor, Eleanor. I'm glad things worked out for you. Janet threw me a going-away party at the library. Small, just co-workers and a few friends, but it meant everything. They'd stood by me when others hadn't. They'd helped me survive the worst period of my life. The cottage felt like a new beginning. Fresh paint on the walls, soft yellow, the color of hope. New furniture that I picked out myself. A garden in the backyard where I planted tomatoes and herbs and flowers that would bloom in the summer. Gregory came by twice a week for dinner. We'd cook together in my new kitchen, talking about his therapy sessions, his volunteer work, his plans for the future. He'd started dating someone new, a teacher named Sarah who came from a background similar to ours. She was kind and genuine and treated me with respect from the first moment we met. I told her everything, Gregory said one evening while we were washing dishes. About the wedding. About how I treated you. About Clarissa. I didn't want to hide any of it. What did she say? She said everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. How you try to fix things. He dried a plate carefully, set it in the cupboard. She wants to meet you properly. Maybe have you over for dinner at my place next week. I'd like that. We settled into a rhythm, Gregory and I. Not the old relationship where I gave everything and he took without noticing. Not the broken relationship where he chose his wife over his mother. Something new. Something more balanced. Two adults who loved each other and were learning to show it in healthy ways. If you believe dignity is the strongest form of justice, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. One Saturday in June, Gregory showed up with Sarah and a surprise. They were holding hands, both nervous, both smiling. We have something to tell you, Sarah said. I knew before they said it. Could see it in their eyes, in the way they stood close together, in the hope radiating off them like sunlight. We're engaged, Gregory announced. And before you worry, it's not going to be like last time. No big wedding. No fancy estate. Just close friends and family in Sarah's parents' backyard. Simple. Real. And Mom, he took my hand. I want you there. Not in the back row. Not as an afterthought. I want you beside me. Because none of this, none of the good things in my life right now, would exist without you. Without your love. Without your sacrifice. Without your refusal to let me stay the person I'd become. I started crying. Happy tears this time. The kind that wash away hurt and leave something clean behind. I want you to walk me down the aisle, he continued. I know that's not traditional. But you're the one who raised me. You're the one who taught me what love looks like. You're the one who deserves that honor. The wedding happened in September. 50 people in a backyard decorated with lights and flowers and laughter. I wore a new dress, dusty rose, elegant but simple, and walked my son down an aisle made of grass and fallen leaves. Sarah's vows made everyone cry. Gregory's vows made me proud. He talked about second chances and learning from mistakes, and the woman who never gave up on him even when he gave up on himself. At the reception, he made a toast. To my mother, he said, raising his glass. Who taught me that dignity isn't something you demand. It's something you carry inside yourself, even when the world tries to take it away. Who showed me that the strongest revenge isn't violence or cruelty, it's simply refusing to be erased. Mom, I spent too many years being ashamed of where I came from. But I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm grateful. Everything good in me exists because you loved me enough to sacrifice everything. This wedding, this life, this second chance, it's all because you went home that day and chose your dignity over my comfort. Thank you for teaching me what real strength looks like. The room erupted in applause. People I didn't know came up afterward to hug me, to tell me they'd heard the story, to say I'd inspired them. But the best moment came later, during the mother-son dance. Gregory held me close and whispered, I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry it took me so long to show it properly. You're showing it now. That's what matters. We swayed to the music, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The gate. The photograph. The 5 words that had broken my heart. The silence that had somehow saved us both. They tried to erase me from my son's wedding. They tried to make me invisible, to convince him I didn't matter, to write me out of his story. But I didn't need to be at that first wedding to matter. My absence spoke louder than my presence ever could. It exposed the cruelty. It showed Gregory who his